Lucas thought he had hit rock bottom, but then a simple note from a stranger turned his world upside down. What was written on it? Subscribe to the channel to support us, and leave your comments so we can improve. The scent of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air, a tantalizing fragrance that Lucas could barely afford to enjoy. His eyes, heavy with exhaustion, roamed the cozy interior of the cafe, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Lucas's calloused hands shook slightly, not just from the cold, but from the invisible weight he carried on his young shoulders. "A black coffee, please," he murmured, fishing the last few coins out of his pocket. The metallic clink echoed like a cruel reminder of their precarious situation. Lucas closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself a brief breath. The images of the day played through his mind like a slow-motion movie. His mother's pale face against the white hospital sheets, the incessant sound of the machines keeping her alive, the nurse's look of pity when he asked about the new treatments. A muffled sob broke him from his thoughts. At the next table, an elderly woman rummaged through her purse, her shaking hands dropping coins onto the floor. His eyes, blurred by unshed tears, met Lucas's. In that instant, something inside him broke and came back together. Without hesitation, Lucas bent down, collecting the scattered coins. "Let me help you, ma'am," he said softly, placing the money back into her wrinkled hands. The woman looked at him, surprise and gratitude mixed in her tired gaze. "Thank you, young man. I don't think I have enough for a coffee today." Lucas felt a lump in his throat. How many times had he been in this situation himself? How many meals had he skipped to make sure his mother had the medicine she needed? "Please," he said, turning to the counter. "2 coffees, one for me and one for you." The words were out of his mouth before he could think. It was crazy, he knew. Every penny was precious. Every coin could mean an extra minute of treatment for her mother. But at that moment, the gratitude in the lady's eyes was worth more than any amount. "My dear," the woman whispered, tears now flowing freely down her wrinkled cheeks. "You have no idea what this means to me today." Lucas felt a warmth spread across his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. For a brief moment, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. As they enjoyed their coffee in comfortable silence, Lucas observed the lady. There was something in her eyes, a mixture of wisdom and pain that he recognized all too well. It was the same look I saw in the mirror every morning. "You know," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "I've been coming to this cafe for years, every day at the same time. It was our ritual, mine and my husband's." She paused, swallowing hard. Today marks a year since he's been gone." Lucas's heart sank. The pain in his voice was palpable, an open wound that time had not yet healed. "I'm sorry," he murmured, the words seeming inadequate in the face of such a loss. The lady smiled sadly. "Life is made of moments, young man. Moments of joy, of pain, of love. And sometimes it's the small gestures that make all the difference." She took a napkin and pen from her bag, writing something with shaking hands. Folding the paper carefully, she handed it to Lucas. "Here," she said, her eyes shining with an intensity that surprised him. "Don't open it now. Save it for when you feel like you've lost all hope." Lucas accepted the paper, confused, but touched by the seriousness of the gesture. When the lady got up to leave, she held Lucas's hands in hers. "Thank you for reminding me that there is still goodness in the world, even on the darkest of days." And with that, she was gone, leaving Lucas with a whirlwind of emotions and a simple folded napkin. That night, sitting by his mother's hospital bed, Lucas reflected on the coffee date. Exhaustion still weighed on him. But there was something else now. A flicker of hope, faint but persistent. He watched his mother's sleeping face, mentally tracing every line of worry, every mark left by illness. How much longer could she hold out? How much longer could he hold out? The lady's note seemed to burn in her pocket. Lucas took it out, turning it over between his fingers, tempted to open it. But something stopped him. Maybe, he thought, it wasn't time yet. Her words echoed in his mind. Life is made of moments. What moment was this? One of despair or one of hope? Lucas held his mother's hand, feeling her weak but steady pulse. Each beat was a promise, a reminder that life, however fragile, persisted. At that moment, Lucas made a decision. He would fight, not just for the treatments, the extra shifts, or the money. He would fight for the moments, the big ones and the small ones. For your mother's rare smiles, for the warmth of a coffee shared with a stranger, for the possibility of making a difference, even if for a brief moment, in someone's life. The note remained unopened, a silent reminder that sometimes hope comes in the most unexpected packages. And as the monitor next to him continued its rhythmic beeping, Lucas closed his eyes, allowing himself, for the first time in a long time, to dream of a better tomorrow. After all, life was made of moments. And this, as difficult as it was just one of them. Next? Well, the next one could change everything. The silence that enveloped Lucas as he entered the house was deafening. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Mother? His voice echoed through the empty hallway, fear rising in his chest like a dark wave. The faint sound of a moan guided him to the bedroom. There, lying on the floor next to the bed, was his mother. His face, normally radiant even in illness, was pale and contorted with pain. "Lucas," she whispered, her eyes fighting to stay open. Lucas's world fell apart in that instant. His hands shook as he dialed emergency, his voice breaking as he begged for help. The next few minutes were a blur of sirens, urgent voices, and the incessant beeping of machines. Hours later, sitting in the cold, impersonal hospital waiting room, Lucas felt the weight of the world crushing his shoulders. The doctor's words echoed in his mind. Critical condition. Next 24 crucial hours. Prepare for the worst. How could he prepare to lose the one person who was always by his side? How could he face a world that seemed determined to take away everything he loved from him? It was then that his fingers brushed against something in his pocket, the ticket. That piece of paper that the mysterious lady at the cafe had given him, with instructions to open it only when he had lost all hope. If not now, when would it be? With shaking hands, Lucas unfolded the crumpled napkin. On it, elegant handwriting revealed an address and a cryptic message. When the world seems darkest, remember, light always finds a way. Come see me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Hope awaits. Lucas reread the message several times, his heart pounding in his chest. It was crazy to consider that now, wasn't it? His mother was fighting for her life just a few meters away. How could he even think about leaving? But something inside him, an almost inaudible voice, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the path to the salvation he so desperately sought. The night passed like an endless nightmare. Lucas alternated between vigils at his mother's bedside and moments of despair in the hospital's empty corridors. With each beep of the machines, with each faint sigh, he felt his own heart break a little more. When the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the windows, Lucas made his decision. With a soft kiss on his mother's forehead and a whispered promise to return soon, he left. The address took him to an imposing mansion on the outskirts of the city. As he approached the gate, Lucas felt fear and doubt grow. What if this was just a cruel joke? What if he was abandoning his mother for nothing? But before he could step back, the door opened. "Lucas?" the gentle voice surprised him. It was her, the lady from the cafe, now dressed elegantly and with a welcoming smile. "I knew you would come." The next few hours were a roller coaster of emotions for Lucas. The lady, who introduced herself as Eleanor, shared her story. She was a philanthropist who had lost her only son to a rare disease years ago. Since then, he dedicated his life to helping young people in desperate situations. "Your act of kindness at the cafe, Lucas, reminded me so much of my son," Eleanor explained, tears glistening in her eyes. "The way you sacrificed yourself for a stranger, even though you were clearly in trouble. It was a sign." Lucas listened, stunned, as Eleanor outlined her offer: a full scholarship to the university of her choice and a steady job at one of her family's companies. More than that, she offered to cover all of her mother's medical expenses, ensuring the best possible treatment. "But why?" Lucas managed to stammer out, tears flowing freely down his face. "You barely know me." Eleanor smiled, a smile full of understanding and compassion. "Sometimes, Lucas, a single act of kindness can change the course of many lives. You gave me back my hope that day. Now it's my turn to give back." Lucas's world, which just a few hours ago seemed to be falling apart, was now expanding with unimaginable possibilities. The guilt over leaving his mother was quickly replaced by an urgency to return and share the news. Running through the hospital corridors, his heart beat with a mixture of fear and hope. As he turned the corner to his mother's room, he almost collided with the doctor. "Luke!" the doctor exclaimed, a smile lighting up his tired face. "We were trying to find you. Your mother. There's been a turning point. She's responding to treatment. I don't want to get your hopes up, but this is very promising." Lucas's legs felt weak, and he leaned on the wall to keep from falling. Tears of relief and gratitude flooded her eyes. In a matter of hours, his world had been turned upside down and then righted again, but this time with a bright future on the horizon. Entering his mother's room, Lucas held her hand, feeling the strength returning to his grip. As she slowly opened her eyes, a faint smile forming on her lips, Lucas knew. This was not the end. It was just the beginning. And it all started with a simple act of kindness in a cafe. The alarm sounded at 5 a.m., waking Lucas from a restless sleep. His eyes burned, protesting another bad night's sleep. But there was no time for regrets. The life he had dreamed of was finally within his reach, and every second was precious. Lucas dragged himself out of bed, his aching muscles reminding him of the long hours of studying the night before. The tiny apartment he shared with his mother was silent, except for the soft hum of the oxygen machine in the next room. As he prepared for another exhausting day, Lucas couldn't help but smile when he saw the books spread out on the kitchen table. Medicine. He, Lucas Johnson, son of a domestic worker, was studying to become a doctor. The thought still made him dizzy with excitement, but reality soon set in. A quick glance at the clock and the familiar panic settled in his chest. If he didn't hurry, he would be late for work at the hospital, where he was interning as an administrative assistant. "Mom, I'm leaving," Lucas called out softly, knowing she was probably still asleep. There was no response, just the constant sound of the machine. Swallowing the lump in his throat, he left, locking the door behind him. The university campus was buzzing with activity when Lucas arrived for his first class of the day. As he walked through the imposing corridors, he couldn't help but notice the stares, some curious, others suspicious, few openly hostile. He was an anomaly there, one of the few black students in a sea of privileged white faces. "Hey, Johnson," his classmate Brad's voice reached him. "Ready for today's test? Or are you going to ask for another special treatment?" The nasty comment hit Lucas like a punch in the gut. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to ignore it, entering the classroom with his head held high. No matter how many times he proved his worth, There would always be someone questioning his presence there. The next few hours passed in a blur of classes, frantic note-taking, and heated discussions. Lucas struggled to absorb each piece of information, aware that each minute of study brought him a little closer to his dream. But while his colleagues went out to lunch or studied in the library, Lucas rushed to the hospital. Exchanging books for a clipboard, he immersed himself in a world of medical records, exams, and consultations. "Lucas, I need these reports in half an hour." His supervisor's shrill voice snapped him out of his thoughts. He nodded, swallowing down his frustration. Here, just like in college, he felt like he needed to work twice as hard to prove himself. The hours dragged by, and Lucas felt the weight of fatigue in every fiber of his being. But there was no time for rest. After work, it was time to go back to college for more night classes. It was during one of these classes that his cell phone vibrated. The name of the nurse caring for your mother flashed on the screen, making your heart race. "Mr. Johnson, your mother has relapsed. I think you'd better come home." Lucas's world stopped. In an instant, all her worries about exams, work, and prejudice seemed insignificant. All he cared about was his mother. Running through the hospital hallways, Lucas felt the familiar weight of fear settling in his chest. What if he was wasting time? What if, while he was chasing his dreams, he was missing his last moments with the person he loved most in the world? As he entered the room, the sound of his mother's labored breathing hit him like a wave. She looked so fragile, so small in the makeshift hospital bed at home. "Luke?" His voice was just a whisper. "I'm here, Mom." He held your hand, feeling tears burn your eyes. You should be studying." Even now, she cared more about him than herself. Lucas swallowed hard, guilt consuming him. "It doesn't matter now. You're more important." His mother squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "No, son. Your dreams are important. Don't give up on them. Not for me." Her words struck him like lightning. Lucas felt the weight of all his struggles, all his fears and doubts, threatening to crush him. How could he continue? How could I balance it all? But then, looking at his mother's face, he saw something that surprised him. Pride. Pure, unconditional pride shone in his tired eyes. At that moment, Lucas understood. His fight wasn't just for him. It was for her too. For all those who doubted him. For all those who would come after. "I promise, Mom," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "I will not give up." As the night wore on, Lucas remained at his mother's side, studying in the dim light of the lamp. The books on his lap were more than just paper and ink. They were promises. Promises of a better future, of dreams fulfilled, of lives saved. And even though the road ahead was long and full of obstacles, Lucas knew he was not alone. His mother's love, the opportunity given to him, and his own fierce determination would be his guiding light. The road would be difficult, but Lucas was ready for the journey. The incessant beeping of the machines echoed through the hospital corridors, a macabre symphony that Lucas knew all too well. Sitting at his mother's bedside, he watched helplessly as her life slowly slipped away, like sand slipping through her fingers. Sarah Johnson, once a force of nature, now lay frail and pale, her breathing a ragged whisper. Lucas held his hand, trying to convey strength, but feeling weaker by the second. "Lucas," her voice was barely a breath, "you should be in class." A sob escaped her throat. Even now, on the verge of death, his mother only thought about him, about his future. "Shh, Mom. Don't worry about it. I'm right where I need to be." But the words sounded hollow, even to his own ears. The truth was that Lucas no longer knew where he should be. The world he had so carefully constructed over the past few months, medical school, the hospital internship, the promise of a bright future, now seemed distant and meaningless. Every minute away from his mother was now filled with gnawing guilt. He should have stayed. He should have dedicated every second to her instead of chasing selfish dreams. The sound of footsteps interrupted his dark thoughts. Dr. Ramirez, the chief oncologist, entered the room, his face a mask of professional compassion. "Lucas, can we talk for a moment?" In the hallway, the doctor's words blended into a cacophony of medical terms and gentle euphemisms, but the message was clear. There was nothing more to be done. It was time to prepare for the inevitable. Lucas felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. How could he prepare to lose the one person who was always by his side? How could he move forward knowing that, in her final moments, he had been absent, pursuing a life that now felt so empty? The next few days passed in a blur of vigils at the hospital and absences at college. Unanswered emails piled up in his inbox, missed calls from his teachers and supervisors, a constant reminder of the world he was leaving behind. One night, exhausted and with a heavy heart, Lucas returned to the small apartment he shared with his mother. The silence was deafening, every corner screaming her absence. Sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by medical books that now seemed to mock him, Lucas buried his face in his hands. The tears he had held back for so long finally came, a flood of pain and regret. It was then that he noticed the envelope. White and elegant, it stood out among the bills and advertisements. With shaking hands, Lucas opened it. "Dear Lucas," the letter began, the elegant handwriting instantly recognizable as that of Eleanor, the philanthropist who had changed his life. "I heard about your mother, and my heart goes out to you. I know words may seem empty right now, but I ask that you remember one thing: the impact you have had and will continue to have on the lives around you. Remember that day at the cafe? Your act of kindness not only touched my life, but created ripples that continue to spread. The nurse caring for your mother told me how your kindness inspired her to be more patient with other patients. The classmate you helped with his studies is now mentoring other students. Lucas, you are making a difference, even in the darkest times. Your mother sees this. I see this. It's time for you to see it too. The pain you are feeling is a testament to the deep love you and your mother share. Don't let this pain keep you from the path you both worked so hard to build. I'm here for you, Lucas, for whatever you need. You are not alone on this journey." Lucas's tears now stained the paper, mixing with the ink of Eleanor's words. Something inside him broke and reformed at the same time. He remembered the look of pride in his mother's eyes when he told her about medical school. He remembered his words: "You will save lives, my son, just like you saved mine, every day." With a shaky sigh, Lucas pulled out his phone. It was time to call your teachers, to go back to class. Not because he was abandoning his mother, but because he was honoring her sacrifice, her love. The guilt still weighed heavy in his chest. The pain still threatened to swallow him. But now there was something more, a renewed purpose, a fierce determination. He would be the doctor his mother always knew he could be. He would make a difference, not just for her, but for all those, like her, who needed care, compassion, and hope. As the night progressed, Lucas opened his medical books. Every page was a promise to his mother, to Eleanor, to himself. A promise that even in the darkest hours, the light of compassion and love could shine. And so, between tears and determination, between pain and hope, Lucas continued his journey. Because sometimes, it's in the darkest moments that we discover our true strength. The hospital room was immersed in a heavy silence, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of machines and Sarah Johnson's labored breathing. Lucas held his mother's hand, their fingers intertwined as if he could, through that simple gesture, keep her anchored to this world for a few more precious moments. Sarah's face, once radiant and full of life, was now pale and marked by illness. But her eyes, those eyes that had always been Lucas's beacon in his darkest nights, still shone with unconditional love. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of medical equipment. "My boy." Lucas leaned in closer, his heart clenching in his chest. "I'm here, Mom. I'm right here." Sarah smiled weakly, a ghost of her once radiant smile. You've always been my greatest pride. Did you know that?" The tears that Lucas had been holding back for days finally spilled over. "Mom, Shh," she interrupted him softly. "Listen to me, Lucas. You have a bright future ahead of you. Don't let anything, not even this, stop you from achieving your dreams." Lucas felt a wave of guilt engulf him. How could he think about dreams and the future when his mother was there, fighting for every breath? "But Mom, I should have been here. I should have spent more time with you instead of—" Sarah squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "No, Lucas. Don't you dare blame yourself. Every moment you spent studying, working, building your future, those were the happiest moments of my life." She paused, struggling to catch her breath. Lucas waited, his heart beating painfully against his ribs. "Seeing you grow, seeing you become the incredible man you are today, that has been my greatest joy. And knowing that you will continue to grow, to help others as a doctor, that gives me peace." Her words were like a balm and a spear at the same time, soothing and wounding his heart in equal measure. "But how can I go on without you?" Lucas whispered, his voice breaking. "You're all I have, Mom." Sarah smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "I will always be with you, my son, in every patient you heal, in every life you touch, and your happiness. Your happiness will be my greatest achievement." The days that followed were a confusing mix of silent vigils, whispered conversations, and moments of crystal clarity. Lucas memorized every expression, every word, every touch. He knew deep in his heart that these were the last precious moments he would have with his mother. And then, one peaceful morning, as the sun rose, painting the sky soft shades of pink and gold, Sarah Johnson took her last breath. It was a moment so quiet, so serene, that for a moment Lucas thought she had just fallen asleep. "Mother," he called softly, reality settling like a weight on his chest. "Mother." The silence that followed was deafening. The next few hours and days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, well-meaning condolences, and grief so deep Lucas thought he might drown in it. He moved like an automaton, carrying out necessary tasks, but feeling completely disconnected from the world around him. It was only the night after the funeral, sitting alone in the small apartment he had once shared with his mother, that reality finally hit him full force. The silence was oppressive, every corner screaming her absence. Lucas grabbed a framed photo from the bedside table. In it, his mother beamed, her arms wrapped around a younger Lucas wearing his first white coat. The memory of that day, the pride in her eyes, the joy in her voice, hit him like a wave. And then, in the midst of the crushing pain, Lucas felt something else. A strange and unexpected feeling of peace. Not complete or perfect peace, but a small thread of serenity intertwined with your pain. He had been there. In the final moments, when every breath was precious, he had been by her side, holding his hand, whispering words of love and comfort, being the strength she had always been for him. His mother's last words echoed in his mind. "Your happiness will be my greatest achievement." With shaking hands, Lucas reached for his medical books. The pages, once intimidating, now felt like an invitation, a way forward, a way to honor your mother's sacrifice and love. He knew the days ahead would be difficult. Grief was not a linear journey, and there would be times when the pain would knock you down. But in that moment, sitting in the silence of his apartment, with memories of his mother surrounding him like a warm hug, Lucas made a promise. He would live. Not only would it exist, but it would live fully. He would study with passion, work with compassion, and love with all his heart. Because every life he touched, every patient he healed, would be a testament to Sarah Johnson's love and sacrifice. And so, with tears in his eyes and determination in his heart, Lucas turned the page. The future, uncertain and frightening as it was, awaited him. And he would face that future with the strength, grace, and love his mother had taught him. Because in the end, that's how we honor those we've lost, by living the lessons they taught us, carrying their love with us every step of the way. The silence in the small apartment was deafening. Lucas was sitting on the floor, leaning against the bed his mother had occupied for so long, surrounded by half-empty boxes and memories that seemed to scream from every corner. The funeral had been a week ago, but for Lucas, time had lost all meaning. His fingers brushed the edge of a crumpled envelope, his acceptance letter to the medical residency program. Just a month ago, this piece of paper represented everything he and his mother had dreamed of. Now it seemed nothing more than a cruel reminder of everything he had lost. "What's all this for now?" Lucas murmured to the empty room, his voice hoarse from crying. The shrill sound of the phone cut through the air, making Lucas jump. He let it play, unable to face yet another well-meaning voice offering empty condolences. But then the answering machine went off, and the voice that filled the room made him freeze. "Lucas? It's Eleanor. I know you're going through a difficult time. But please, call me when you can. There's something your mother wanted you to know." The beep that signaled the end of the message seemed to echo for an eternity. Lucas lay still, his heart beating painfully against his ribs. Your mother? What else could she have left him but an endless void? With shaking hands, he picked up the phone and dialed Eleanor's number. "Luke?" Her voice was soft, filled with concern. "Thank you for returning. How are you?" The words caught in his throat. How could he describe the abyss of pain he was drowning in? "It's okay," Eleanor said gently. "You don't have to pretend. Your mother, she asked me to give you something she wrote in her last days. Can I stop by?" An hour later, Lucas was sitting at the kitchen table, a sealed envelope in front of him. His mother's handwriting, shaky but unmistakable, adorned the front. "To Lucas, my beloved son." With a heavy heart, he opened the envelope and began to read. "My dear Lucas, if you're reading this, it means I'm already gone. But don't think for a second that I left you alone. Every beat of your heart, every breath you take, carries a piece of me. Son, I know you are suffering. I know the pain seems unbearable right now. But please hear me one last time. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on the life we fought so hard to build. Remember that day when you were 7 years old and you came home from school crying because the other kids made fun of your dream of becoming a doctor? I told you then, and I repeat now, you were born to heal, Lucas. Not just bodies, but souls. Every sacrifice I made, every extra hour I worked, every night I spent awake worrying about the bills, it was all worth it because I knew I was paving the way for your bright future. Don't allow my departure to turn off this light inside you. On the contrary, let it shine even brighter. Every life you touch as a doctor, every patient you heal, will be an extension of my love for you. And in the moments when the pain seems unbearable, when you feel like you can't go on, remember, you carry within you not only my love, but my strength. The same strength that allowed me to raise you alone, that made me fight this disease until the end. Lucas, my beloved son, live. Live fully, love deeply, and heal tirelessly. This is my last will, my last gift to you. With all my love, forever and ever, Mommy. The tears fell freely now, staining the paper. But for the first time since his mother's death, Lucas felt something other than crushing grief. A small but undeniable spark of hope? He stood up slowly, his legs shaking, and walked to the window. The afternoon sun bathed the city in a golden glow, as if the world was trying to show you that there was still beauty out there. With a shaky sigh, Lucas pulled out his phone. His fingers hovered over the keypad for a moment before dialing a familiar number. Dr. Ramirez, it's Lucas Johnson. I'd like to confirm my position in the residency program. Yes, I know it's been weeks